approaches to pricing. He's working mostly in the Amazon retail and marketplace business division of Amazon. Prior to that, Bob has had a lot of different positions, including being at Uber as part of the marketplace division. He was also a professor of professional practice at Columbia Business School, and has had also a lot of different positions in industry, in particular being on the board, a founder and a member of the board of directors of Nomis Solutions. He has authored a lot of publications and books, in particular a book on pricing and revenue optimization for consumer lending, and is a co-editor of the Oxford Handbook for Pricing Management. He's also the recipient of the Inform Impact Prize, and finally also holds the Bachelor in Economics and Math from Washington State University, as well as a PhD in Engineering Economic Systems from another university that we usually don't speak the name of on this campus. And with this, I'm very happy to introduce Bob for this talk.
Thank you. Yeah, jealousy is a horrible thing. But I do have to admit that actually my last year at the university that shall not be named, my advisor actually came to Berkeley, and I had to cross-register at UC, but please don't tell anybody that association. Thank you for inviting me. And I'm going to talk about a project here that, as Alex mentioned, let's see if this works. Great. As Alex mentioned, I'm currently at Amazon as Director of Pricing Research, so leading the team that sets all of the prices, and puts the algorithms behind all the prices that you see when you go on the website and hopefully buy lots of stuff from us. And I'm also the founder of a company that does dynamic pricing for banks. But I'm not going to talk about anything that has to do with either of those companies. I'm going to talk about a project I did when I was a consultant a couple years ago, just prior to starting with Uber, where, as Alex mentioned, I was head of data science for the marketplace. And I think this was a fascinating project. It was called in by a company called Sintra that was involved in a public-private partnership to build a couple toll lanes in Texas, and I'll talk a little bit about what this means. And the question they were looking at is, as a public-private partnership, which some of you may be familiar with, they would be investing in the capital side of this, and in return, they would get concession on the tolls. In other words, they could keep the tolls for the next period of time, 35 years in the case of one of the projects. So the question they had, which turned out nobody, at least in the published literature, ever looked at, was what toll should they set to maximize their revenue? So this was the problem. So to give you a little background, it's a managed lanes concept. There was already existing free lanes. These are called general purpose lanes, sometimes GL, and they built some toll lanes. This is a select solution or partial solution to very highly congested stretches of freeway, combined with relatively stringent budgets. So, Texas and state Texas, where it believes in the use of the private sector. Let me show you how these work. If some people.
Well, if you're traveling westbound on 635 from the airport at Marsh Lane, it's right, it's got traffic backed up. Also, a problem downtown down the southbound 75 with Little Rogers, where it splits when the right lane gets by. And
Dallas-Fort Worth is home to 25% of the most congested freeways in Texas. If you drive them, you've probably wished for a faster and easier way to get to and from places like work, appointments, and the airport. Especially when you'd rather be at home, enjoying life with your family and friends. The Express lanes are a series of new express roadways built adjacent to existing freeways. They consist of 2 or more lanes that let drivers consistently travel at speeds of 50 miles per hour or faster, even at rush hour. To control traffic flow and eliminate congestion, drivers will pay a toll for using the new lanes. The price will fluctuate based on the level of congestion and amount of traffic and could change from time to time and day to day. Prices will also vary based on vehicle size and whether or not a vehicle has a valid toll tag. In addition, carpool or HOV users are eligible for discounts. Sensors in the roadway will measure traffic speed and volume. When congestion starts to build up, toll prices will rise to prevent congestion and eliminate traffic jams. When traffic decreases, the toll prices will automatically drop back down to encourage more use. Using the new lanes is easy. You just need to follow the signs. A Express lane sign is posted about 1 mile ahead of each entry, indicating the side of the road where the entry is located so drivers will have plenty of time to decide whether or not to use the lanes. Dynamic message signs will alert drivers about road conditions, weather alerts, or emergency situations up ahead to help them make travel decisions. One sign will notify drivers that the Express lanes can be used with or without a toll tag, and that a fee will apply for non-tagged vehicles. Another sign will inform drivers about the 50% discount offered to carpoolers who have a toll tag and have pre-registered online at texpresslanes.com or by using the Drive On Express Lanes mobile app. A pricing sign located ahead of the decision point will display both the regular vehicle price and the discounted carpool price that vehicles will pay to travel to the destination shown. It will also indicate that prices are higher for large vehicles and remind drivers that additional fees apply for vehicles without a valid tag. The price displayed at your point of entry is the amount you will be billed. When you enter, the system will lock in your price and you will only be billed the amount shown, even if the price changes as you travel. As you near the entry ramp, confirmation signs will prompt you to make a decision based on the price you saw and guide you onto the Express lanes. The system is all electronic and cashless, so there's no need to stop at toll booths. As you drive through the lanes, scanners read your toll tag or photograph your license plate. Then your trip information is transmitted to the North Texas Tollway Authority, where your toll will either be deducted from your account if you have a valid toll tag, or an invoice will be sent to you by mail. Well in advance of each subsequent toll segment, a sign will display the price for further travel. You can choose to continue or exit the Express lanes at no extra cost. Exits will be clearly marked and positioned to allow ample decision time. Upon exit, no further charges will apply. Route maps are available online. Take some time to familiarize yourself with them so you can take full advantage of the lanes. The Express lanes offer a faster and more pleasant way to travel and a better quality of life with more time for family and friends. Hey, honey. The choice is yours. To learn more, visit texpresslanes.com and buckle up and drive safely.
So that was pretty complicated, but what was the main message there? If you love your family, you'll take the toll. If you're really unhappy at home, and just go ahead and accept the traffic jam, but it'll be a signal that you're not really a loving parent. So that's the project that we were called in to say, okay, how should we set these tolls? As you can see, the tolls could change every 5 minutes. This was 2 quite large projects. One is the LBJ, one is North Texas. They're both in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. They're both extremely congested areas. There's a combination of public funding, so about $820 million in public funding for a $4.7 billion project. So Sintra, the company that hired us, was putting in the $4.7 billion, combination of equity and debt financing, and wanted to know, how do we recoup this? How should we set tolls over time in order to recoup this, this investment? And this is a big Texas side project. There's actually 28 lanes of traffic at one point, if you include what are called in Texas, these side roads here, these frontage roads, which are part of the freeway. If people have traveled in Texas, it's pretty amazing. They like their freeways there. And they have plenty of land to put them on. So the questions we looked at for a managed lane project like this. So one thing to remember is that these lanes would not exist if it were not for the incentive for the company to invest in. This is different from a lot of projects which have gotten negative publicity. For example, in Atlanta, where the government, and they talk about with 101 on the peninsula, where the government just says, let's take one of these lanes and make it a toll lane. Then people get quite upset about that kind of project because in some sense that's potentially a taking. This is a different style of project because in this case and in similar projects, the additional lanes are only built, or probably only built, because of the participation of the private sector partner. And the questions were, from a research point of view, I worked on this as a consulting project, but then when I was at Columbia, I also had a PhD student work on this as part of his PhD dissertation. And some of the additional information you'll see is provided by Ricardo Sancho Gomez of Sintra North America as part of the project. How do various heuristics perform in its total generalities, an extremely difficult problem. How important is dynamic adjustment? So the tolls can change every 5 minutes. How important is that relative to kind of getting the general level right? And how should what kind of dynamic policies should be implemented? Any questions about how the toll road works? I'm not going to play the video again because it's too complicated, but any question about the kind of setup? Has anybody traveled on one of these? In the North Tarrant or the LBJ? No, but similar kind of. Yes, sir?
The only question was, is it like a one payment time or it's according to the miles?
It's according to so there's different segments. So you get on one segment and it tells you the price. You go a ways, you can exit, you can get onto the general purpose lanes, or you can go on the next segment and there's a price for that as well. So each segment has a separate price. Yes?
How did you address any equity-based issues?
Let me
Okay.
let me get to that. Yeah, we didn't, but let me do it. Yeah.
What was the reaction of the public to this?
This project has which part of it? Just the
The concept of we're going to build new lanes, but they're going to be tolled.
so this project, the public, there's a few complainers, but in general, people were accepting of the idea that, hey, this is like, okay, there's, free water at the water fountain that somebody's going to open a designer water store, you can buy designer water, that doesn't, hasn't hurt anybody in general. In another project in Charlotte, North Carolina, it's become a political hot potato where people are very negative on it. So maybe it's different between North Carolina and Texas. Maybe it's different between the way it was publicized, but similar project, Texas, not much opposition. Lot generally now uncontroversial. North Carolina, there's been a tremendous amount of political. It's got to be an election issue in North Carolina. So what was some of the previous research? Most of the previous work in toll setting has been setting tolls to maximize social welfare, and that does not maximize profit for the toll road owner. We took advantage, we did some traffic flow modeling, long and rich literature here, which I won't go into. One of the questions that we did look at was long-term equilibrium questions. So we've come up with an adaptive algorithm, but we've not looked at the fact that, well, if you start certain tolling policies over time, people will adjust and they may do different things and it may come to some equilibrium. We have not looked at that issue. We have drawn a lot on the queuing theory. There's some queuing theory literature about queues of different quality and paying to go to one and better queues than another. And another stream of literature, another concept that we drew on a lot was Paris metro pricing. Is anybody familiar with Paris metro pricing?
It's flat.
No.
Well, are you talking express metro or metro?
This is actually by Obelisco's paper on Paris metro pricing, the first class coaches on Paris metro.
Long time ago.
Yeah.
It's been abolished before.
But the first class coaches on Paris metro were apparently, and I don't have experience with this, identical to the other coaches, but they charged more. So the idea was that these would be less crowded, you pay more, but because they cost more, there's not any first class amenities, they're just less crowded. So this has been thought of as a potential adoption for net non-neutrality. Should we have certain parts of the internet we just charge more, or certain communication channel we charge more for, they will naturally be less congested than others. So there is a stream of literature there.
One major difference, they were painted in yellow.
Okay. No, I didn't get that from the paper. So I actually took a train from Prague to Budapest, and it used Paris Metro. I bought a first class ticket, which was 37 euros instead of 30 euros, and the cabins were identical and the service was identical. It's just there was nobody in my cabin. Okay. So the model basics, we first did some offline kind of theoretical modeling. How would you even think about this problem? So we thought about two sets of parallel lanes, managed lane for which a toll may be charged, unmanaged lanes that are always free. Arriving vehicles choose which set of lanes to take based on the current toll and the travel time saving from taking the managed lanes. This is a slightly debatable assumption because people generally don't know the difference, but you can argue with Waze and similar things, they have some idea. A controller, not necessarily a person, is able to set and update the tolls dynamically in response to current conditions. So as you may have seen from the little video, there are sensors. We know the speed on both the managed and unmanaged lanes all throughout the system. We can use that. We know the weather. We know the time of day. We can use that information to update the tolls. And the goal is to maximize expected revenue. The marginal costs of accommodating another car on the managed lanes. The unmanaged lanes is extremely small. So this is equivalent to maximizing profit. So this is what it looks like. Vehicles arrive. We're going to assume arrival rate of lambda sub t, showing our debt to the queuing theory world. You're going to see a toll of p sub t. Some are going to go in the managed lanes. Some are going to go in the unmanaged lanes. There'll be a time savings taking the managed lanes. We assume that the vehicle arrives as, I should have put an arrow under here. We assume they know that as well as the toll. So, what did we find? Well, we did a model where we looked at each set of lanes as a queue. This is not a perfect model, and I'll show why, but we'll move on to a better model later on. So there's service rates for managed and unmanaged lanes. The number of vehicles in the unmanaged and managed lanes are x sub u of d, x of m. There's a vehicle arrival rate, there's a toll, and we assume there's a consumer value of travel time saved, and this has a distribution. It's a random variable, and people will take the managed lanes if the cost is less than their value of the time they save. Make sense? So the managed lane traffic is going to be this thin Poisson, where the price over the change in the difference in travel time, if it's greater than 0. If there's no difference in travel time, we assume people choose randomly. And if the managed lanes are more congested, or we're trying to charge a toll and the managed lanes are equally congested, we assume nobody's gonna take the managed lanes. And the unmanaged lane traffic is just the total traffic entering minus the managed lanes. Any questions about the setup? So we said we use a queuing model. The standard typical traffic model looks more like this. So a lot of you are probably familiar with these kinds of models, whereas the traffic volume goes up. There's a period of free flow speed typically defined in the area where cars can pass freely, so everybody can more or less go with the speed they want. At some point, some idiots start going slowly in the left lane and people have to slow down. Queues begin to form, and at this point, you're into a jam situation. And then it goes down to the jam speed. The jam speed is, of course, always greater than 0. Otherwise, all of us who've been in traffic jams would still be in them. But it's typically around 5 to 8 miles an hour, and this would be, depending on the road, 70 to 75 miles an hour. So that's the most realistic model. We had a queuing model which looks like this. So it doesn't have exactly the same form, but it has nice tractability, and it's similar. It does not have this free flow period here, and it doesn't have this cutoff where there's actually a capacity. You just can't fit any more damn cars into the lane. And we looked at 4 different policies. Static policies are what most toll roads in the world use. And, you know, back in the day, a lot of them were single toll, didn't change over time. I remember driving the New Jersey Turnpike, the tolls were always the same, 2 in the morning or 8 in the morning or 5 at night. Multiple toll is where you can have preset tolls that vary with the time of day, but they're not updated based on the current conditions. So this is most relatively new toll roads use it. So say, hey, the toll is going to be $8.36 at 8 a.m., $8.50 at 9 a.m., $7.10 at 10 a.m., and that's published the night before or the week before, and people know what to expect. There's 2 adaptive policies we looked at. Those are non-adaptive. One is myopic. What if we just look at the current conditions and we try to maximize the revenue from every vehicle entering given the current conditions? So saying, here's the current condition, which is encapsulated in the state variable and difference in the time saving from taking the managed lane. What if we just want to charge the toll that maximizes from this car? And then the optimal policy, which, because we have a stylized model, we can actually compute. So this is a dynamic program. We want to maximize expected discounted revenue. So we discount with beta by beta, which makes no difference as it turns out because we assume the same thing happens every day. This is the managed lane traffic. This is the price for the managed lane. Turns out that this Bellman equation is convex in the unmanaged lanes, concave in the managed lanes. The myopic toll is a linear function of the travel time. That kind of makes sense because we use this ratio of price over travel time. So just by setup, if people pay and is linear in travel time, then the optimal toll, it turns out, will be linear in travel time. And surprise, surprise, the revenue maximizing toll is greater than the myopic toll. So if you're going to maximize revenue, you charge a toll that's greater than or equal to the toll that maximizes the revenue for each car. Now there's an economic intuition behind why this is true. And it involves externalities. Does anybody have I'll go into it later, but just given this setup, can anybody describe why this is true? Yes, sir.
Well, essentially,
quite it. What if we start raising the toll? So here we assume cars come in, they either take one lane or the other. There's no escape route. They can't turn around and go back. So what happens is we start raising this toll. What happens to cars? What do cars do?
They won't use the toll lanes.
They what?
They won't use the toll lanes.
They go, and which means they use the free lanes. What happens to the free lanes?
They become more congested.
Which means you can do what with the toll lanes?
Raise the price.
Yeah. So it turns out, and that's the inescapable Darth Vader-like conclusion that we came to, and anybody else who's, a few other people who studied this, come to, is there is a positive externality from charging more because it helps you congest the general purpose lanes, which means you can then charge more as the time differential comes up for the managed lanes. So we ran this toy model on with these different policies on 3 different demand scenarios, a kind of high peak, medium peak, no peak scenario, and we found that the optimal policy, the myopic policy does better than the static policy. So these are optimal static policies. The myopic does better than that. So the myopic is optimizing for each vehicle as it comes in. So it takes account of the state, the current state, which is the time differential between the general purpose lanes and the managed lanes, and the optimal policy, which does quite a bit better. So this is the policy revenue minus the optimal over the optimal. Actually, I guess it's the other way around, sorry. It just doesn't have negative. So what's the nature of the optimal policy? Well, these are the tolls, and these are the arrival rates here, high peak case, low peak case. In both cases, you actually raise the price substantially before the peak. And you are, by doing that, encouraging, incentivizing drivers to take the general purpose lanes, which then begin to get jammed up a little sooner than otherwise. And then you actually lower the price when it appears you're at this entire peak. It's was very counterintuitive to some of the people we work with. So obviously, the bigger the difference between the two, the bigger the time savings, the more you should be able to charge. That's the way the myopic policy works. But it actually is not the case if you have this dynamic forecastable policy. You actually charge more here than you do here. But you get a lot more cars here because you've created a situation where it's very, you save a lot of time. Any questions about that?
So are you modeling the fact that the drivers will get to the next segment at a different time depending upon the travel time on the previous segment?
Not in this model. This is an offline. This is a stylized model, but I'll talk about a simulation we ran, and the results from this simulation did not do that, but we then did a multi-segment simulation as part of the actual planning for it, which did take that into account. That's a good question. So we called this jam and harvest. Our customers preferred seed and harvest, which sounds like a positive thing. But entering a peak traffic period, it's optimal, so it tolls higher than the myopic optimal as traffic starts increasing. Encourages drivers to take the unmanaged lanes, which creates congestions in those lanes earlier. Once they begin to get jammed, drivers will pay higher toll for the use of much faster managed lanes. Actually, I would take that back. They don't always pay higher tolls. The tolls are lower than they could be under the static policy, although not under the myopic policy. So this pattern has appeared in all our simulations, very robust finding. And it was then discovered in an independent study, somebody's master's thesis, which I found when I was kind of updating this for here, found the same thing. I had a student, when I was teaching at Columbia, I had a group of students who wanted to work in this problem, and without any coaching from me, they found the exact same pattern. So it's pretty uncontrovertibly true that this is the nature of the optimal solution. So what it does mean is this solution is not state dependent. Exactly. It cannot be represented completely by a state, which is the difference in the traffic times. Let me put it more precisely. So here's the time savings. As you start out, the time savings is small, but you have a higher toll. Then as you get up here, you actually get up the peak, you come back down. So a policy that does not incorporate this effect is based on time savings alone is suboptimal. And this just shows the difference for a typical peak type situation. So that's a stylized model. Let's now talk about the more realistic model we used. We compared the policies, and we ultimately built a simulation that works for the particular configuration for the NTE and the LBJ, but I won't talk about that. But our initial simulation, we calibrated using public information about a 10-mile stretch of the SR 91, which is a private toll road in Orange County, California. But the information is public. We looked at a demand generation process that generated total traffic. We have a consumer choice model, so they look at the tolls, they look at the traffic differential, they make a choice. We then simulated how the traffic would change. We used the mesoscopic traffic simulation model here, and then we updated and ran the consumer, so we ran this in discrete time intervals. The demand generation, we used an auto-regressive. I'll see one of the things that we wanted to capture is the fact that demand, there's high correlation between demand at different hours. So we did not want a model where demand was independent hour to hour, because there's days where the traffic's just higher than other days. And when you study traffic patterns, if you look at those entering the toll road at 8 o'clock in the morning, it is highly predictive of who's the number going to be entering at 9 in the morning. This gives us this Monday through Friday sort of situation. We had, I think that's eastbound, we did both directions. We tried a bunch of different logistic regression models. The model that we used considered toll by time of day and the squared time savings. So it turns out typical modeling in this area had used time savings in a linear model, which is what we did in the initial stylized model. But when we actually fit the data, it looks like people have a nonlinear response to the time savings. So if it's twice as much time saving, they're willing to pay 4 times as much, más o menos, for that, or at least it's a better model than just the linear, which is not, I guess, not unintuitive, but a little surprising and different from previous models. So here's the fit, the predicted market share of the managed lanes, and here's the predicted log odds versus the actual log odds. So it fit reasonably well. And we use a standard mesoscopic traffic simulation similar to Dynasmart, which is a widely used out of MIT traffic simulator. Mesoscopic means we didn't go microscopic, where we didn't do agent-based and have individual cars and see how they act. We had basically divided the roadway into segments and then said cars move from this segment to that segment according to these types of rules. This is how our model performed against the, this is the model we ended up using. This is the actual data, and we calibrated it to the SR 91 as before. We looked at 3 different policies: myopic, a certain equivalent optimal. So set the optimal tolls based on the expected demand pattern over the day, do not react to what actually has happened, and linearly adjusted tolls. So we needed to go and find a policy that could actually be implemented. the policy that's a dynamic program, particularly with uncertainty, too complicated to try to calculate immediately. So the policy we looked at was this linearly adjusted policy. So we'd say, here's what we expect based on history, the travel time difference to be. Here's what the optimal toll would be based on history, given that expected time. We will then do a linear adjustment according to some sort of slope with different downward slope and different upward slope. So if the actual travel time savings is here, we do it here. These slopes are different during the day, and we used stochastic gradient descent to determine what the optimal ones would be optimal, to estimate what they should be based on historic data. Make sense? So this is a relatively easy policy to implement because you can calculate these ahead of time, say the night before, and then you can say, okay, where are we at? We're here. The actual toll can be calculated linearly and immediately. So the optimal policy is, again, to price higher and myopic entering a peak. That creates a larger travel time difference, the ability to charge more during the peak, or at least get more revenue during the peak. This is the expected myopic tolls, and this is the average demand. So myopic toll stays very low because in these periods there's not really everything is pretty free-flowing, so there's nothing to do. Then goes up quite a bit for the peak and back down. For the I didn't show the toll here, sorry. For the optimal toll, or not the optimal toll, the linearly adjusted toll, it goes up quite a bit here, and it actually starts going back down during the peak. But it's always higher than the optimal myopic toll. So, talk a little about implementation. We built a traffic flow simulator which looks at the different segments and connects them together and creates these expectations of what we think the price will be in the next day, the next week, what the toll should be, and what the traffic difference will be. There's a pricing analyst. That's a stock photograph, so that's not actually a pricing analyst. It probably has nothing to do with Sintra or tolls. But looks at this and says things like, well, let's say there's going to be a Dallas Cowboys game, so there's going to be a traffic jam, things we don't know from history, modify it. Or tomorrow, I don't know if they have snow days, like bad weather day in Dallas. We're looking to incorporate weather feeds in this, but weather slows everything down, as you can imagine, so we will modify this accordingly. There's then the toll setting module, which looks at the speed and flow by lane, looks at weather and incidents. Incidents are things like an accident, which could happen in the managed lane or the unmanaged lanes, and would modify the tolling, and then uses the linear approach to update the toll. I won't go into this. This is the tolls. They do have this constraint that the traffic has to move at least 55 miles an hour in the managed lanes, or they have to undertake certain actions, so that's a constraint in the optimization. And here's what the average toll looks like by time of day and day of week for one of the segments. When you look at the averages, there's not a tremendous difference. There's pretty good stability across the days of the week. It's Tuesday, it's highest for some reason. Friday, lowest. Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday in there.
Is this a cumulative over the entire stretch, or is it?
This is one segment.
Okay, 1 second. 1 second.
Yeah.
How many?
I think there's 4 segments on one, 5 on the other. So people can pay, will pay $30 to travel this. There's also a shocking number of people who take the managed lanes even when there's no cars on the unmanaged lanes. The toll is very low, but you know, it's like $1 or something down here. But in a lot of these cases, these people are taking the toll road and there's people who take the toll road and there's no reason to. I don't totally get it, but yes,
Is there a ceiling on how high,
yeah, there it is.
what is it?
It's different by segment. The, there's a complex, so there's this complex rule, which I didn't go into partly because I don't remember all the subtle details about. If the traffic is for some period of time traveling slower than 50 miles an hour on the managed lanes, they're supposed to raise the toll, but they can only raise the toll this high, except there's interactions between how slow it is and how high they can raise it. So there are restrictions. It's not a single number.
Got it, it's based on speed.
Yeah.
I guess like from a, you might get to this later, but if, from a policymaker standpoint, like what are the kind of levers besides setting a minimum speed or a maximum number, a maximum toll, or what are some tools they have in their box that they can apply in addition to the revenue maximizing?
Well, the policymakers aren't doing, so by policymakers you mean the Texas Department of Transportation?
Yeah.
I mean, Cintra is setting the tolls within these bounds. These bounds were contractually agreed to at the initiation of the project. So they can't, I mean, I don't want to say something like school, but I don't think they can change. I don't think the state can say, oh, we want to change those bounds. They are written into the contract. There's all sorts of other obligations written into the contract about maintenance of both of them, clearing wrecks and all these sorts of things as well. I mean, at this point in time, policymakers don't have a ton of control unless they want to go outside the contract somehow. If by policymakers you mean.
Well, if they were doing a new toll lane, what are that sort of the idea of those things that they could consider? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, they could consider caps, of different types or different levels. But of course, to get Cintra or somebody else to build it, it has to pencil out in a high uncertainty environment. So you put more restrictions on, then your partner is going to say things like, oh, I need to have control of it. So after 35 years from building, which means 30 years from now approximately, this reverts entirely to the state of Texas. And they can do whatever they want setting the tolls. They can try to constrain it more in the short run, but then if you're the intelligent person who's going to build this, you can say, well, okay, give it to me for 50 years and I'll accept more restrictions, potentially. So, what's happened since it opened? This is data that I got from Cintra. So for the North Tarrant Expressway, the total traffic is up by 45%. Not too surprising. They built extra lanes. And the average speed change is improved by 15%. So it's an improvement. LBJ Express hasn't been open quite as long. It's 20% up on vehicles per day, 10% better average speed overall. So you might say if that's your short view of social welfare, it actually improved this aspect of social welfare, more vehicles accommodated at faster speeds, of course, at price. This is the average speed for the managed lanes. They've stayed well above the 50-mile-an-hour speed limit. The general purpose lanes have generally seen their speed decline from Jan 15, which is shortly after this opened, till Jan 19. I don't have more recent numbers here.
But if it starts from a nominal demand, is it because of demographics?
Pardon?
If it you added more lanes. So unless there's a breast products style, there is no reason for the other travel time to to go down unless there's more demand and demographics is increasing. Okay.
These are rapidly, I mean, part of the reason that the state wanted to build these was not just that they were constrained now, but it was felt, this is the northwest part of Fort Worth, it was felt this is a high growth area, there's a lot of demand that's gonna continue. You know, and then you can get into the question of, by building extra lanes, did you also inspire more growth out there and more of this traffic, which is one of the endless debates in this area. So, you know, that's basically all I had. Any questions?
Did you try a social welfare optimizing policy to compare?
I have not. I probably should sit down and, I've wondered if it's the myopic policy of social welfare optimized, but I haven't been able to show that. But it's a very good question.
What are the non-compete clauses that they sign at the beginning of this?
What's that?
For the Orange County toll roads, for example, OCTA and Caltrans signed the non-compete clause where they said we won't add any more capacity on parallel routes for the duration of this contract.
I'm not sure what they are here, to be honest. I know about that in Southern California because that was one of the more controversial aspects of that project. I honestly don't know. It's not like there's a lot on the drawing board here that Texas is going to build, but I don't know if they signed a non-compete that or not, to be honest. Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to the social equity question. So,
You need this question?
well, you know, when you price lanes, right, it's going to negatively affect people, particularly who have longer travel distances, who may be more uncomfortable, who are priced out of the inner core, okay? So, in putting this, you know, policy or project on the ground, was there any discussion about mitigating factors, increasing transit funds, redirecting subsidies?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't there during the initial discussion, so I can't answer those questions. I certainly wasn't privy to what the Texas
Yeah.
department said. I mean, I guess the only mitigating factor is there was no capacity taken away. I mean, there's additional capacity added here. So even people who take the general purpose lanes, the free lanes are better off in theory than they would be if
Right.
the managed lanes had not been built because there's extra capacity and people taking the managed lanes. So in some sense, the people who are traveling
So
for free.
that's how they diverted from having a social equity problem. Because you're building more lanes, you're taking.
Yeah, I mean, these private-public partnerships are, you know, becoming amazingly popular in lots of different fields. This is probably the most visible one, but, you know, I was just talking to a guy on a plane, or they're building a jailhouse in Orange County, it's a public-private partnership, and, you know, you'll pay rent per prisoner, and, you know, to use private sector. And in an era of constrained budgets, I mean, the question to me is, there's several social equity questions which are, you know, A, should the state be ponying up for this? They did not want to in this case. That's one way. The second argument, of course, is that, you know, in this situation, the people who are using the roads are actually the ones paying for them, which is back to one of the discussions I had with one of the students of, you know, pay for use. Tolls are a form of pay for use. So, you know, why should poor people who don't use any of this but use public transit be paying taxes to support free lanes for wealthy people? I mean, I'm not an expert in welfare or social equity, but those are some of the arguments that get into the discussion. Joanna? I don't know. I should ask. I should look into it there. I think these vehicles, vehicles with 2 or more get 50% off. I mean, how would you distinguish? A lot of them are Ubers and Lyfts. You know, so do those count as carpools, or do they? You can also buy this carpool project. There's several questions. One, I don't know if you looked at the video, it's an incredible amount of information coming at people. I mean, most of it they can block out, except the tolls. And we're kind of like, one, you know, if we show them this additional information, does it cause them some mental overload and they will, you know, they will smash into the car ahead of them? There's a lot of concern about that, even just showing the dynamic tolls. Turns out it hasn't, nothing has happened there. The second question is, an interesting one is, would those be credible? You know, would people actually believe them, or would they think that the toll road is, you know, is juicing up the savings in order to, you know, in order to encourage people to take the toll road? And one of the interesting problems is you cannot exactly forecast the savings as the traffic's dynamic, right? You can say, here's how the average of how people are traveling for the next 5 miles, but that will change as you move through it. So, you know, like using Waze, it could be different. And then are you legally liable if it turns out that, well, actually it would have been different than what the thing said, and I took the toll road because what it said. And they haven't done it, but there was a lot of discussion. Maybe they should.
Very good. So what do we,
I have one more question. We have time?
Is the data from these lanes and tolls available for public that kind of wants to get on here and see?
The tolls certainly aren't. I think the land usage is too. I can try to find it out. I believe it is.
okay. Well, in the tradition of the ITS seminar, we'll leave you with some little thing to remember us. Very helpful when you're on the Stanford campus.
Oh, thank you.